The Boeing 747 sliced through the night sky, a steel bird ascending into the inky blackness. The engines roared, a powerful symphony against the silent backdrop of the stars. The plane's wings cut through the air with precision, leaving a trail of invisible turbulence behind. Its belly, illuminated by runway lights, shrunk away beneath. The ground crew watched as the giant aircraft lifted off, their faces lit by the glow of the runway lights, a mix of awe and routine etched into their expressions. Inside, the usual post-takeoff routines played out. Seatbelts clicked open, overhead bins were adjusted, and the soft chime of the seatbelt sign turning off signaled a brief moment of freedom for the passengers. Passengers settled into their seats, drinks were ordered, and a low murmur filled the cabin. Flight attendants moved gracefully down the aisles, their smiles a comforting presence in the dim light. The scent of freshly brewed coffee mingled with the faint aroma of the cabin's recycled air. Flight 666 was bound for Los Angeles, a red-eye journey across a continent shrouded in darkness. The passengers, many of whom were seasoned travelers, knew the drill: settle in, try to sleep, and hope for a smooth flight. The air hummed with a dull, mechanical rhythm. The engine's steady drone was a constant reminder of the power and precision keeping them aloft, a mechanical heartbeat that lulled some passengers into an uneasy sleep. Outside, the world was a tapestry of twinkling lights, fading as the plane climbed higher. The city below became a distant memory, replaced by the vast, dark expanse of the night sky, dotted with stars that seemed close enough to touch. Among the passengers, a sense of uneasy anticipation hung in the air, a subtle tension that had nothing to do with the flight itself. Whispers and glances were exchanged, as if everyone felt the same invisible weight pressing down on them. It was as if some unseen presence had boarded the aircraft, a silent passenger with a dark itinerary of its own. The shadows seemed to move with a life of their own, and the dim lighting only added to the eerie atmosphere, making everyone wonder what lay ahead in the darkness. High above the ground, the plane shuddered. A ripple of unease passed through the cabin as the lights flickered, plunging the passengers into momentary darkness. Nervous laughter cut through the sudden hush. Then, just as quickly, the lights returned, bathing the interior in their pale, artificial glow. A collective sigh of relief swept through the cabin. The incident, though brief, had injected a note of discord into the flight's rhythm. Conversations resumed, but they were laced with a new undercurrent of apprehension. The unexpected disturbance had stirred something primal within the passengers, awakening a deep-seated fear of the unknown.
I can't shake off this feeling, like someone is watching me.
Roger, a businessman in seat 13B, felt a cold shiver run down his spine. He couldn't shake off the feeling of being watched, an unsettling sensation that had been growing since he'd boarded the plane. He glanced nervously around, his eyes scanning the other passengers. An elderly woman across the aisle met his gaze, her face creased with worry. He quickly looked away, his heart pounding in his chest. The lights flickered again, briefer this time, and a cold breeze seemed to waft through the cabin, raising goosebumps on his arms. His fingers tightened around the armrests, knuckles turning white. Something was wrong. He could feel it. Panic began to spread through the cabin like a virus, infecting everyone it touched. The once calm and orderly environment was now a scene of chaos and confusion. Whispers, hushed and urgent, rippled through the rows of seats. People leaned in close to one another, their voices barely audible over the growing tension. Passengers exchanged anxious glances, their eyes wide with fear. Every creak and groan of the airplane seemed to heighten their anxiety, making the situation feel even more dire. The once mundane sounds of the plane, the hum of the engines, the gentle clinking of glasses, were now amplified, taking on a sinister edge. Each sound seemed to echo ominously, adding to the sense of impending doom.
What's happening? Why are the lights flickering again? Is something wrong with the plane? The questions hung in the air, unanswered and unsettling.
A young girl a few rows ahead of Roger began to cry. her small voice a piercing wail in the tense silence. Her cries seemed to cut through the air, making the situation feel even more desperate. Her mother tried to comfort her, but her words were lost in the growing cacophony of fear. The mother's attempts to soothe her child were futile against the overwhelming sense of dread that filled the cabin. The air crackled with a palpable sense of dread, a heavy weight pressing down on everyone on board. It felt as though the very atmosphere was charged with fear, making it hard to breathe. The plane, once a symbol of speed and progress, now felt like a steel coffin hurtling through the night. The sense of entrapment was overwhelming, as if they were all prisoners of fate, with no escape in sight. Unbeknownst to the terrified passengers, the pilots in the cockpit remained oblivious to the horror unfolding behind them.
Smooth sailing tonight, wouldn't you say, Mark?
Captain Thompson, a seasoned veteran with thousands of flight hours under his belt, hummed along to a classic rock tune on the radio, his gaze fixed on the instrument panel. Mark, his attention absorbed by a weather report, merely grunted in response. Outside, the storm clouds gathered, their shadows hidden by the impenetrable darkness. The plane, a tiny speck in the vastness of the night, continued on its course, hurtling blindly towards its terrifying destiny. The first sign of her was a whisper, a faint rustling sound near the galley. Then a shadow detached itself from the darkness, a slender silhouette against the dim emergency lights that had flickered back on. She moved with an unnatural grace, her footsteps completely silent against the plane's carpeted floor. Her uniform was that of a flight attendant, the airline's logo a tarnished emblem on her crisp white blouse. But her face, that was what chilled the blood, was as white as bone, her features stretched into an unnatural, ghastly grin. Her eyes, two bottomless pits of darkness, scanned the cabin, settling on each terrified face with an icy intensity that spoke of something truly inhuman. Terror erupted. Screams ripped through the plane as the ghostly figure glided down the aisle. Passengers scrambled for their lives, their frantic movements only adding to the chaos. A businessman in a rumpled suit clawed at his seatbelt, his eyes bulging with terror. A young couple clung to each other, their faces pale and drawn. A blood-curdling scream pierced the air as the ghostly figure reached out, her touch as cold as death. The businessman, his face contorted in agony, slumped back in his seat, his life force extinguished. Blood, dark and viscous, seeped from his mouth, staining the white fabric of his shirt. The carnage continued. The ghostly figure moved through the plane like a reaper, her touch bringing swift and brutal death. The air grew thick with the stench of fear and the coppery tang of blood. Passengers, driven mad by terror, attacked each other, their desperation fueled by the horrifying realization that there was nowhere to escape. Outside, the storm raged, lightning illuminating the plane in brief, terrifying flashes. Inside, the plane became a whirlwind of chaos and death, a macabre ballet of terror orchestrated by an unseen force. Then, with a final, ear-splitting shriek of metal, the plane vanished into the storm clouds, swallowed whole by the night. Static. A crackle of interference, then a voice, thin and reedy, whispering from the void.
Flight 666, we are going down.
The voice, warped and distorted, trailed off into a chilling silence. Air traffic control, their screens blank where Flight 666 should have been, listened in horrified silence. The storm raged outside, a furious symphony of wind and rain, but it was the silence after the voice, the utter and complete absence of any further transmission, that truly sent shivers down their spines. The search and rescue teams scoured the area for weeks, their efforts hampered by the treacherous weather conditions. The relentless rain and howling winds made their task nearly impossible, yet they pressed on, driven by the hope of finding any sign of the missing plane. But no trace of Flight 666 was ever found. The vast ocean and the endless sky seemed to swallow the aircraft whole, leaving behind no clues, no debris, nothing to indicate what had happened. The plane, along with its passengers and crew, had vanished without a trace, lost to the storm and the night. Families waited in agony, clinging to the hope that their loved ones might still be alive. But as days turned into weeks, hope began to fade. The official investigation concluded that the plane had likely crashed due to a catastrophic mechanical failure exacerbated by the severe weather. Experts pored over flight data, simulations, and weather reports, piecing together a grim picture of the plane's final moments. But whispers of a different explanation persisted, passed from pilot to pilot, from air traffic controller to air traffic controller. These whispers spoke of something more sinister, something that couldn't be explained by mechanical failure alone. Whispers of a phantom flight attendant, a haunted flight, and a voice on the radio, whispering from beyond the grave. Some claim to have heard the eerie voice themselves, a chilling otherworldly sound that defied all logic. Whispers that sent chills down the spines of those who dared to listen, a chilling reminder that some mysteries are best left unsolved. The legend of Flight 666 grew, becoming a tale of terror and intrigue, a story that would be told for generations to come.